Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to the Standards Advisor Training for Large and Unhoused Chapters. My name is Angie Carter, and I will be your technical producer and moderator this evening. This webinar will be presented by Katie Meehan, who is the Assistant to the Director of Standards, and will feature Whitney Hatcher, Jordan Newsom, and myself as our guests. Our goal is to help you better understand how to work with your VPS and to help see how to make the Standards Committee run as smoothly as possible. Before we begin the presentation, let's take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. On the right side of your screen, you will see the attendee control panel, and on the left is the webinar viewer window. This viewer window will display the presenter's screen when the webinar begins. The control panel can be minimized or expanded by clicking on the horizontal double arrow button in the left upper corner. Minimizing the panel allows a better view of the presentation. Take a moment to practice. There are a few features of the control panel that the attendees should know. First, be familiar with the Raise Your Hand button. This button is located along the left side of the control panel. It allows you, I am missing a page of my script. It basically allows you to ask questions and to let me know if you have a question. There's also the questions pane that you can type a question in should you have one. We will probably save questions until certain moments within the presentation. So if you type it, don't be, it might take a minute for the question to get answered. So right now I'd like you to take a minute to type a question into the question panel, something just like hi, simple, that can be, let me know that you are able to operate the question panel. This webinar is being recorded and will be on the website shortly within the next couple of weeks. So spread the word that if you have, if someone missed it, they can watch it later. And now I would like to hand the virtual microphone to Katie.
Thanks, Angie, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We are starting this standards advisor training just to give you guys some more support. We know it's something that you guys asked for. We did, for anyone who was a standards advisor last spring, we sent out an advisor survey kind of to judge how your chapters were doing, what you thought was going well, what you needed some more help with, whether that was trainings or resources or help from the headquarters volunteer or the fraternity volunteers. And we used those results from that survey to build out this training for you, so we hope you guys find it effective. Just so you know, this is in addition to the training that is being held for part of Officer Month for the Vice President Standards on February 8th. We are going to hit some things very high level tonight that we are going into more detail on February 8th, so we hope you can join us for that webinar as well. Like Angie said, I am an assistant to the Director of Standards. Angie, do you want to go to the next slide?
Okay, hold on.
Thank you. I am one of the assistants to the Director of Standards. I oversee regions 1, 2, and 3, the East and Delta provinces. My co-assistant Jenna oversees regions 6, 7, all of Zeta, and Epsilon and Theta provinces. In addition to our roles as assistants to the Director of Standards, we also are serving as a specialist in the new pilot. So I work directly with the chapters in Beta province. And tonight on the call with me, I have Whitney Hatcher, who is our Gamma specialist, Angie Carter, who is our Zeta specialist, and Jordan Newsom, who is our Kappa specialist. We'll go hit the agenda pretty quickly. So like I said, we did review the results from the survey when we built this out. Our goal tonight is to do 30 minutes of content and then leave some time open for questions at the end. that you guys might have burning questions either from tonight or just in general from your time being a standards advisor. So again, we're going to do standards team structure, kind of the new structure we're going off of, how your committee should be organized, what the responsibilities are, what your responsibilities are as advisor. We're going to hit on communication reports because that's a big thing that we see chapters struggle with all the time. What areas require prior approval before a committee can take action? We're going to touch on the liaison roles and then hot topics. So I'm now going to hand it over to Whitney to start off with the standards team structure.
Thank you, Katie. We are very, very excited. It's very, upcoming, and something we're really all excited about is the new standards team structure. We've made a few changes to make sure we provide the most support we can to our chapters and to all the people that volunteer within those chapters. So this will be voted on in 2016 at the convention, and it basically expanded the team from 2 assistants to 14 specialists. And each of these specialists works with, around 16 to 17 chapters, depending upon how many is in each region. This specialist communicates weekly regarding minutes, probation forms, anything like that the chapter needs, support on or has questions about. And the plan is that we'll continue with this expanded team for standards regardless of the convention vote. We'll do our best to include advisors in communication. Sometimes chapter officers don't always copy advisors on emails, and they self-govern themselves, so it may not always be possible depending upon the situation, but we'll do our best to communicate with all the advisors. If you would go make sure that you're listed in key reports as the standards advisor, make sure your email address is updated on the CAPA website so we can make sure we're sending you all that relevant information from headquarters. In the past, we've had a larger team than the director of standards and the assistants, but it just wasn't as public as this one it has been. And the main thing we've seen in the one semester we've done this is that it's led to an increase in communications, more effective working relationships within our chapters and with headquarters, better efficiency, quicker response times, and all in all, better support for our chapters. That's the main reason we went to this change in our structure, was to provide the support to that team. We, of course, remind everybody that volunteers are human, so we all, we don't get paid to do this. It's not our full-time job. But if there is a concern about having different responses from these people, we do want you to let us know what we can do to support you. Every day is a new chance to learn something new, and as we deal with these very tough situations and standards, we hope that we can provide support and all learn from these things. Does anyone have any questions about the structure?
No one yet.
No one yet. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. So the Standards Committee consists of the Vice President of Standards, the chapter president, new member chairman that sits on there for the entire term, member at large, advisor, and then one member from each academic class. Most of the time when we see standards committees that aren't utilizing the right people, it's normally that they pick someone from each pledge class as opposed to each academic class. So make sure you keep that in mind, that they break up by freshman, sophomore, junior, senior to elect those reps. If members are unable to serve during an investigation, you can pull members from temporarily from the Academic Excellence Committee because they've been elected to a role that requires confidentiality. So that's a nice way to pull members if you need people to serve. Chapters don't get to choose who's in on a conference, so everybody needs to be included in each meeting if possible. There are no one-on-one meetings. This is something we've seen a lot of in the past, and we're definitely wanting to get away from that. So no one-on-one meetings with a member and an officer. And if a committee deems a smaller group is necessary, that group should be comprised of the president, vice president of standards, and the advisor. Any deviation from this structure, as how the committee is formed, needs to be granted permission from the PDC or the RDC. So each week, the committee responsibilities include meeting once a week. we like to recommend that that meeting be the same date and the same time if possible. Obviously, I know many of our chapters, especially in the East, are experiencing some snow and that sort of thing. So obviously there are reasons that these may, vary from time to time. But even if there are no new member conference or no member conferences, it's really important that you meet once a week and provide, that consistency to the chapter, and that way you are reliable and you're there for your team. Um, you know, these responsibilities will be covered more thoroughly, like Katie said, on February 8th, but it's really important that we talk about them tonight as well. The VPS needs to communicate with all people listed for various situations, so they need to communicate with the standards advisor, the specialist, the PDC, assistant to the director of standards, and the director of standards. They are required each week to submit minutes and reports to this email address, standardsreports@kkg.org, within 48 hours of that meeting that takes place each week. Communicate regularly with the liaison officers, and then to uphold the fraternity standards and educate the chapter. It's really important that we get those minutes within 48 hours. That way we can be efficient in making sure that if there are things that need followed up by the next week, that we're on top of that and we can get a quick response to them. So additional responsibilities for the committee on the next slide. There we are. To maintain confidentiality, this is so important in standards that the members that come down be able to trust other members on the committee, promote spirit and morale, hold the new member conferences with the new members that are taken during this semester and brought into membership with our chapters. Loss of membership, unfortunately those situations do come up, and it's important that the committee be responsible for those. Online only is the only way we do emergency information cards now. And then the VPS serves as the chairman of the fireside ceremony and then presides in the absence of the president.
Okay, so this is Angie, and I'm going to talk a little bit about your responsibility as an advisor. And I think one of the most important things that you can do as an advisor is be present for the member conference that may result in disciplinary action. So this would include calling a member in for anything that might warrant a warning of probation or probation, and it's mandatory that if that kind of meeting is being held, that the standards advisor is present. Now, we realize that a lot of advisors might be long distance advisors, and so that might include also being a virtual guest at the member conference via Skype or FaceTime conference call, anything that puts you in that meeting to hear what's going on. Something new that, not really new, it's what we've been pushing for, but it's going to be more mandatory now, is the advisor must physically sign all probation forms. So we cannot accept electronic signatures any longer as far as probation forms and any other important documents that would require a standards advisor signature. So there's some great apps out there, like Genius Scan is one. I personally use Turbo Scan on my phone. It works super slick. So the advisor can sign it and be done with it, and then you scan it and send it along. You can also use a signature like in Adobe. There's different ways that you can make this true signature happen. So it's important too, when you are there, you can give input when the committee is determining action to take, but ultimately the final decision does lie with the committee, and we want to really empower the women to be making final decisions that they feel comfortable with. You should also be included on all emails sent from the VPS. So if she's contacting the PDC or the RDC or the content specialist, anyone that would be on an email, you should be CC'd on that as well. So moving on to communication and reports. So when sending email correspondence, use the following subject line format. This is really important because we get lots of emails every week, and if it's from someone, we can easily pick it out, what chapter and all that good stuff, if it is clear in the subject line. Chapter name, the meeting date, subject of email. So that should just become a pretty routine way of the VPS and yourself sending emails that we need to be aware of the chapter and that kind of thing. So always send signed probation forms and warning probation forms and minutes in the same email. So don't send unsigned probation forms. They don't mean anything if they're not signed. Warning of probation and minutes, they can all be sent in the same email to the standards reports at kkg.org. And that's really important, that who gets those reports, and we'll talk about that in a minute on the next slide. But there's a very clear way and list of people to whom they need to be sent. So, do you have a question that you need answered quickly? First, consult the fraternity bylaws, standing rules, and policies, as well as chapter documents. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to find the information that you need in any of those documents, primarily the fraternity bylaws, standing rules, and policies. And there's a merged index, which is really handy if you're looking for something particular, and it will tell you which of those 3 documents you can find them in, where you can find what you're looking for, and it's all on the CAPA website under resources. Now, also use your chapter documents, because things that entail housing and those kinds of things, which wouldn't really apply to you, but would be relevant chapter by chapter. So then you could also, oops, sorry, went to the wrong slide. I must have moved ahead faster than I thought. A minute. Sorry, I apologize. Okay, so then you can consult the standards resources chain of command. Start with the advisor. The VPS should contact the advisor, then the standards specialist, the PDC, RDC, assistant to director of standards, and director of standards. So that's a pretty clear chain of command as to whom to contact first. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Communication and reports continued. Who gets what reports and when? So this is really important because this is a change from previous years. Minutes get sent weekly to the advisor, PDC, RDC, and standards reports at kkg.org. It does not go to the specialist, the assistant to the director of standards, or the director of standards, because we get those, the 3 of us get those reports from the CAPA website. So they only need to be sent to the advisor, PDC, RDC, and the standards reports at kkg.org. Warning of probation forms and probation forms are sent to the same people immediately after imposing probation. So this is that kind of 48-hour window that everything needs to be in and done. Warning of probation forms and minutes must be sent in the same email. This is much more efficient than having multiple emails coming through. Loss of membership forms are sent to the advisor, PDC, RDC, and again, the standards reports at kkg.org. That is the way that everything is processed, is at headquarters. Okay. So what requires private approval from the director of standards or her assistants? Okay. These are things that you must, before the member is put on probation, or before there's a requested resignation, or before a broken pledge to membership, or before social probation is used. All these things have to be given prior approval from the Director of Standards or her assistants. So if the committee would like to extend a probation past the 10-week limit, that or extend it or set that as the initial time, that needs to have prior approval, and those would only really be under pretty extenuating circumstances. New member probation exceeding 6 weeks, including extensions. Active member requested resignation and dismissal. That's a biggie. You can't, the chapter women or the standards committee cannot start that process without getting permission. New member broken pledge to membership, and of course social probation, which is limited to chapters that need it. And so there's a whole process that needs we can't prevent our members from attending social events because unless the chapter has permission to do so. The women have paid for those events in their dues, and by restricting them, it's not in our guidelines to allow for that. So if we do want to use social probation, please contact either your PDC, RDC, the assistant to the Director of Standards, or the Director of Standards to get the process started, because it can't really happen without that. So, are there any questions at this point? So Madeline has asked that she says she just checked key reports and she doesn't seem to have access. Who do I talk to about that? Madeline, can you, let's see. I would just contact, Katie, who would you contact for that?
You can reach out to member services at headquarters. It should be memberservices@kkg.org. Services is plural with an S on the end, and they will let you know if your position is one that will allow for key reports access. I know some of the advisors have access to view some things and not everything. I do know, though, that you can sit down with your president or your vice president standards at a chapter meeting and go through key reports with them, and they'll be able to show you everything. If it's as far as making sure you are listed as the advisor on key reports, your advisory board chairman will be able to check that as well.
You can also check that through the search members portion of the CAPA website that's open to all members, and it will list what if that's what you're trying to do, it will list what your current position is. So, okay, any other questions about either prior approval or your role as a standards advisor? Okay, so I am going to move on to Whitney and the next slide.
Thank you. So the next part of our presentation talks about liaisons, and this is a really great opportunity for committees to delegate. Committee members are assigned to reach out to a certain chapter council officer and then report back that information to the standards committee. It's utilized as a way to take some of the responsibility away from the vice president of standards, and it's not used as a way to police chapter council officers. So basically what these liaisons do, well, they'll check in, they'll be assigned to a committee, and they'll check in with that committee. So academic excellence, education, event and risk management, finance, house, and recording secretary. So for example, if a treasurer has a list of women who haven't paid their dues, they report this to the finance liaison, not the VPS. So that way, just creates a way for everybody in the committee to be involved as they have a role as a liaison. Next slide. We also have a list of current resources. As Katie said, they did a survey to see what advisors were looking for. So these are resources that are currently available right at your fingertips. So obviously the fraternity bylaws are, a standard thing that we would look for immediately, and that's already been talked about a little bit. This can be used in all situations. The membership commitment statement, many of you may or may not have access to these particular statements, but members on your standards committee will. So your president most likely has access to these, potentially your vice president of standards as well, but they're on key reports and you can go look it up. This is a document that the members sign yearly that they agree to the documents and the expectations for membership. So often when you're meeting with these women, if they've done something that obviously hasn't met our ideals or standards, you can reference this commitment statement that they signed, and there's ways to do that electronically, and your president definitely should be able to bring this up during a meeting should you want to reflect on that with the member during their conference. The suggested guidelines for specific situations, it's a list on probation terms and how to handle 16 different situations, and then a whole separate section on different ideas for spirit and morale. And this is just a great document. I know whenever I was in the field and advising standards, I actually sent this through the Kindle app to my iPad and had it available at all times. It's a kind of a short document. It's like under 20 pages, and you can scroll exactly to which issue you're dealing with, whether it's attendance, alcohol, conduct, or theft. I mean, there's really a list of things. If you haven't reviewed this document, it gives you suggested terms of probation, for those. The Working Together webinar series, these are 20-minute webinars directed to Standards Committee and 6 liaison officers talking about how they'll work together. So oftentimes we see things in standards where situations overlap. Academics and standards is one that comes to mind immediately. House and standards is another one. And how those positions work together to make sure you handle the situation. So those are great, quick tutorials on how to work together with other officers and making sure things are done right. And then, of course, the Standards Committee tutorials, which is great to review with new committees. And I think almost everyone's in the process of getting a new committee if they haven't already. And this would be a great thing for you to do during one of your first meetings, is to do a mock standards meeting and give them an idea of what to expect during a conference and kind of a chance to role play. Future resources that are coming your way. These are things that were requested, and we're very excited. We've been working on them to bring them to you. Workshop at convention provided about mental health issues. Many of our chapters are facing significant mental health issues, whether it be depression or anxiety. All of our chapters are dealing with these things. So there'll be more resources coming your way in the future. And then just this past year, we instituted a gender-based violence program, which is completed by the education chairman and the resource guide by the vice president of standards. And then at your service, everybody wonders how you handle those investigations that you do in the standards process. So we're in the process of creating a new investigation procedure. That way you'll know exactly, how that works. At this point, I think we'll turn over to Katie.
Thanks, Whitney. Angie, do we have any questions before we keep going?
Sorry, I was muted for a minute. If a member is financially delinquent, can her probation include not attending formal or another social event until fees are paid? And that's from Mary Sue.
Yes, so that is the one situation where a chapter is allowed to use social probation without having a plan that's approved by Colette, Jenna, and myself. Is for financial delinquency. They do have to be placed on probation, with a term being social probation until dues are paid. We have a lot of chapters who dues are due on Wednesday, first social event of the year is Friday, and they think they can just restrict everyone without having a fun little standards meeting either Wednesday or Thursday. So we do want to make sure that there is enough time for them to be able to get in, have a standards conference, follow that delinquent bill rule that should be in the chapter standing rules. That's how many days they are, the treasurer waits before they refer to standards. So just something, you shouldn't be having a standards meeting the day after dues are due, but they are allowed to use social probation in that one situation without being approved. If you have any questions about if your chapter, maybe you're a new advisor, whether or not your chapter is approved, please reach out to your standards specialist or to Jenna and myself. We'd be more than happy to let you know about that. So we are going to move on to most common issues. So the specialists, as they're receiving minutes and probation forms and reviewing all of those documents and responding to the chapters each week, we do track the number of warnings of probation that we receive, as well as the type of issues that our chapters are addressing with probation. And the reason why we're tracking that information is it helps us to determine trends. Maybe the chapter is facing an uptick in social media related issues one semester, and they could use with a good reminder for some social probation education, or I'm sorry, social media education, too many things in my head right now, or they're facing a lot of alcohol related issues and they could be using some risk management education. So it's just helpful for us to be able to better support the chapters, and it's also information that we share with the province directors and the regional directors so that they can use that as they're making their plans to assist the chapters as well. So the types of issues that we are kind of tallying everything under for probation include academics, alcohol, attendance, chapter rules, conduct, drugs, event issues, finance, hazing, housing, and social media. And we are looking at this by the type of issue that's being addressed with the probation, not necessarily just by the number of probations. So if your chapter sends in one probation form for one member, she's being placed on probation because she's broken the attendance policy and she also still owes dues, we actually track that under both attendance and finance because it's two separate issues that are leading to her probation. So just in case you end up seeing, you'll see emails from your standards specialist towards the end of the semester with the documentation that we have on file, so you know where those numbers are coming from. The largest issues that are being addressed by all of our chapters are attendance, conduct, and alcohol for the 2015 year. We did receive over 2,400 issues addressed with probation last semester and over 600 warnings, which seems like a lot, but it's great to show that we're actually holding our members accountable. And those attendance, conduct, and alcohol, they seem to be the top three. They kind of reorder every semester. One semester alcohol might be first, another semester it's conduct, another semester it's attendance, but they do seem to be the same top three. Some advisors have asked us for a roadmap and how to handle different situations. And the way we're set up, our chapters self-govern. They're allowed to make their own decisions. We feel like a roadmap is going to take away from that because your chapters aren't given the flexibility to take into extenuating circumstances, different information. So we don't want to provide a roadmap for everyone. However, you can kind of create your own with your standards committee. And what you can do is you can role play with your committee the top 3 or the top 5 issues your committee's faced. If you don't have that information with the files that you have, please reach out to your standards specialist. We can give that to you. And if you create scenarios based off of those top issues, so you have a scenario that a member got sick at a social event and she had to be sent home, have your committee run a mock standards meeting and start talking about, okay, what are they going to take into account? What questions are they going to ask that member who's in their conference? And what are they going to look to do as far as taking action? Will they give a warning? Will they give a probation? It kind of lets them figure out what they want to do before they're actually faced with the situation. And it helps to give them an idea of, okay, well, let's treat every alcohol-related issue at a social event along the same lines of, the same maybe couple weeks of probation. Maybe it's between a 3 and a 4 week probation or something. And it kind of gives them their own little roadmap that then can be changed as they want to focus on different areas. And then we also have some hot topics that we want to talk about tonight. These are just things that we're seeing a lot of questions on or a lot of problems within the last semester that we are communicating with a lot of our chapters about. So the first one is timeliness when addressing issues. Like Whitney talked about, your committee needs to be meeting weekly, and issues should be addressed at the first meeting that follows when the standards committee finds out about it. So we're seeing a lot of times where on February 1st, a member is caught drinking underage at a social event, and it's March 1st by the time they get called in because there's conflicts or the standards committee doesn't meet every week or something, and we really want to be addressing behavior issues as quickly as possible so that we can kind of get them in, get them on probation, or take the action that we want to take, and we're being really timely with it, and we're actually holding our members accountable. A lot of times we see that delay is because the member didn't show up and the standards committee didn't want to take any action without them being there. The standards committee should still be taking action if the member does not show up. All they have to do if they assign a warning or a probation, they just need to email that form to the member. They don't have to hunt them down for a signature. But again, in the effort to be reacting timely to standards related issues and to be holding our members accountable, they should be meeting whether or not the member comes and making a decision at that day and not rescheduling 2, 3, or 4 times. Additionally, probation starts the day of your standards meeting where your committee decides to use probation. There's no delay to it. So you can't say, well, we're going to put you on a 2-week probation, but we're going to wait 3 weeks to put you on it. It needs to start that first day that you're at your meeting, that the committee makes the decision, and run for the number of weeks that you select without including any school holidays, winter break, summer break, that kind of stuff. Another hot topic is academics. This always seems to be a major issue where we're seeing a lot of stuff come to standards that doesn't necessarily need to come to standards. So there's no GPA requirement for our active membership, which means nobody should be referred to standards because they didn't make grades. And I'm saying make grades with air quotes that you guys can't see, but we see that a lot, that a chapter has set a GPA requirement for their active members, and if they don't meet that, they go to standards and they get placed on probation. That goes against our policies. We also should not be referring anyone automatically to standards because they've been on a period of concern for 3 semesters or 4 semesters in a row. We have some women who are just C students, and they try hard, they go to their classes, they're on period of concern, they do everything they need to do for period of concern. Just because they've been on period of concern multiple semesters does not automatically warrant a standards referral. They should be coming to standards, however, if they're not meeting the terms of their period of concern, if they're not meeting with the Vice President Academic Excellence and her committee. But we want to leave a lot of these academic issues with the Academic Excellence Committee. They're much better suited to help members with academics than the Standards Committee is, and we have a lot on our plate already without dealing with members who aren't breaking the terms of their period of concern. Loss of membership is something we get a lot of questions about. I think I saw 5 or 6 emails just today alone about loss of membership in our assistant account. So a few quick things about that. Loss of membership cannot be voluntary if they owe money. So if a member owes money to the chapter and she submits a letter, she wants to voluntarily resign, it has to be processed as a requested resignation, and it has to go through with approval from Colette before you hold the chapter vote. Also, our chapters need to be monitoring the members listed as RNP or resignation not processed in key reports to ensure that the roster remains clean. So when you receive a letter from a member, the registrar normally goes in and marks her as RNP so she doesn't get billed, she's not showing up on the active roster, and it helps to just kind of give her that 28-day waiting period. But a lot of times, for some reason or other, the paperwork does not get sent to headquarters, so the member never actually gets removed. We have some chapters who will have 6 or 7 RMPs on their roster, and they will be 3 or 4 years old. So we want to make sure that everyone's monitoring that's getting taken care of quickly and addressed quickly. If anyone is hanging out on that roster who is pretty old, please reach out to your standards specialist. They can walk you through the process of the steps you need to take before you can get them officially removed. And they should, from the date that the loss of membership paperwork is emailed to headquarters, they're typically removed off your roster within 6 weeks. So just kind of keep that number in mind. Talking to parents. This is another thing that comes up a lot every semester where we hear that parents are reaching out because they're upset that their member is in trouble with CAPA, that she's maybe up for a loss of membership, and they try and get involved. So it's important to remember that our obligation is to our member. It's not to our member's parents, and we cannot break confidentiality from standards and share information with the parents about standards, the standards proceedings, anything like that. If you do hear from parents, please, please, please pass their information on to your standards specialist, your PDC, myself and Jenna, or Colette. We'd be more than happy to talk to them on your behalf, but a lot of times we're seeing that somebody's talking to the parents and they're sharing a lot more information than they really should be getting. So we want to try and make sure that we're respecting our member and we're getting everything, all the information to the member, but we're not oversharing with the parents in that point.
Katie,
And then, yes,
may I make one comment about that? This is Angie.
you can.
Please don't give our information to the parents. Give the parents' information to us, or to Colette,
Yes.
because we don't want parents calling people up the chain. Colette can contact them directly.
Yes, yeah, Angie, that's a very good point. So let them know that somebody will reach back out to them within 24 or 48 hours, give them our information, give us their information, and we will email them back. We will call them back so that they know that somebody will be contacting them. We just kind of want to make sure that we're not oversharing and we're not getting ourselves into some sticky situations, especially when parents start threatening attorneys. At that point, we kind of say your attorney can contact our attorney. So we just don't want to get in any sticky situations, and that's why we're asking that you pass their information up to us. And then with changing the perception of standards, so we saw this a lot in the survey, that standards is looked at as the police, they're looked at as the mean girls because they're trying to hold their members accountable, and they're not really being supported by the standards committee or by the chapter. So a few ways that might help you with changing the perception of the standards committee for your chapter is you can review that member commitment statement with your chapter. Remind them of what they signed and that they're pledging to uphold all of our policies, all of our values, and to act womanly and true. You can also hold mock standards meetings during a chapter so that the chapter can see the purpose of the standards committee. So they can see what the committee is going to look like, what steps the committee takes when they're considering action, how they kind of handle the behind closed doors part of standards when they're making the decision and the members out in the hall or outside. And another great option is you can role play common issues with your chapter in small groups. So break everyone up, give them all scenarios, and have them make a decision about what action they would take. Sometimes your members are going to surprise you, and they're going to take a lot more serious of a stance with a specific situation than your standards committee might. So it kind of gives them an idea of what they need to be looking at and what the standards committee looks at. And it might also give you guys some great ideas for additional probation terms or maybe action that you can take. And now we are going to have the last 15 minutes open for questions that you guys might have. Please, with these questions, try and keep them high level, maybe about the process or procedures or questions about stuff in the webinar tonight. We don't want to get anything too specific about a certain member that you have just because we don't want to break confidentiality, but you can email us if you do have a specific member question. We'd be more than happy to answer your questions.
So go ahead, and if you have a question, type it in the question pane on the control panel, and we will be happy to answer that.
Yep. And Angie, do you want to go to the next slide just so they can see Colette's email and my email? And that way, if you do have a standard specific or a chapter specific question, something that you think might break confidentiality, you can email us directly and we can help you.
So still no questions. So give it a couple seconds more.
Yeah, people might be typing.
Okay, well, if you do have a question, don't hesitate to contact either a specialist or Colette or Katie or Jenna. We as a team are happy to help you. Thank you to our presenter and panelists for leading the session tonight, and thank you for your participation today. If you have questions or comments about today's topic, you may email the presenter directly at kkgassistant2ds@gmail.com. If you would like to be more involved in CAPA's virtual training and webinar programs, we would love to have you join our producer team. Please contact the Education Department at KKG headquarters for details. The benefits are excellent, including the opportunity to support CAPA's webinar program and a front row seat at a great presentation. As we close the webinar, a survey will open on your screen. You will be prompted to respond to a few evaluation questions. Please take a moment to share your thoughts on today's webinar. Your feedback will help us shape future webinar training events. If you have any additional questions or comments whatsoever, please send an email to education@kkg.org. So thanks everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.